是星星出版。
Okay, and welcome, and fingers crossed we should be seeing a nice slideshow that we're going to go through and talk about the World Cup of Design groups as they stand, what we're expecting to be happening, as well as, obviously, we had some people drop out. We'll talk about them first, and then who might be replacing them. Hey, Tanner, we're going to play yours next. So after this is going to be short and sweet, but give you a bit of an update on where we'll be at with judging, what the deadlines sort of should be, how many judges roughly will be going through your course, all of that sort of jazz, but mostly who's in which group, because at the moment, that's a little bit up in the air. First of all, though, I thought we'd kick off with it's important to remember those who have left us and didn't quite make it through. So, sadly, Jay Chantres did not make the deadline. Nor did A Eastwood 54. We will remember them. Sadly, neither did JW Texan. Maddie from Canada also failed to produce. And lastly, but probably most appreciative of this slide, nor did Kenyon. We will not forget them.
Oh, Daddy, why don't you do this to my eyes?
Right, enough of that. Okay, let's talk about those who are going to be replacing them and who will be making the field. Now, first of all, we had, as I've mentioned on a couple of streams, but you may have missed it, there were 3 designers who took up their invites slightly after the deadline had passed.
No. What is this seesaw?
If we could leave the blurb for this stream just a little bit, would be great. Much as I love Rory's voice. So these guys, we had 2 former contest champions who I didn't want to deprive of a spot in the field. And basically I said if we reached a decent amount that I could still incorporate the alternates who really deserve to get through, then I'd slot them in as kind of first alternates. And with 5 going out, that meant that we had 3 guys coming in. That's all right. And we had, so Chabig from Petro, who's formerly is the reigning World Cup of Design champion. Nassau Field Club from Grovey 31. He won the CC Design Contest right at the end of TGC 2019. Another great designer who would have easily made the field and been kind of in a tier 1 slot. And then lastly, we had Nitro with who published Nordhook Golf Links, which I played last night. And I think it's fair to say all 3 of these are good additions to the field. Now, I can understand why some alternates might feel upset if they don't get a slot, but these guys do. I'm hoping I've balanced it about as best I could, but I didn't really feel it was fair that someone just missed a message on the forum because they'd stopped checking it because the game was in a bad place and then suddenly missed out on a contest slot. It was a tricky thing to balance, but I'm hoping I've got it about right. So those 3 are definitely falling into the field, and the way I will do it is there were, of those who exited, there were some tier 8 entries, and I roughly tried to seed them around where the groups are. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So, the alternates that we did have, that then means that there's 2 places available from the alternates, and the alternate field was really strong. Certainly, pretty much all of these last year wouldn't have done disservice to themselves, and it's the strongest World Cup field on average that I would say we've ever had. Like, that means the average level of entry is certainly better than it ever has been. We're going to have some really tough groups to judge. And that was true with the alternates as well. So one of the ones that we had first up was Sweet Honey Farm by Slightly Saucy. Just a reminder of who these guys are. The Gallows Reteach was right out there at the very beginning. He published, I want to say, like a month and a half in. Went very early, but if you're retired, I guess you have the time. Luke Esker with Limbo City Club, with that awesome water feature that we see there. Yipley and Galloway Port Authority, really cool links course. Rebs is Ox Royal Club, which went for that kind of Midwestern vibe. Tawari Toro, which had that kind of coastal pines look that was really nice, from Course Design HQ. And finally, Fargo finished it up last month with Warrigal, or the start of this month with Warrigal Trails, which was an interesting take on a sandbelt course. So I don't want to rank all of the alternates because I don't want someone thinking they got 7th out of 7. But as the way we did this was 3 of the judges, so myself and 2 others, all ranked the alternates, and in the end we had a complete consensus on 1, 2, and 3, and 2 of us had, well, 2 of us had one course in 4th, whereas the other person had it 5th. So we're pretty closely in alignment. Okay, so Seb says Saucy number 1. Anyone else have any thoughts? Anna's saying Saucy 1 as well. Now, obviously, I'm going to eke this out as much as I possibly can do. So we're going to go from 4 to 1, and only the top 2 are getting through, unfortunately. In 4, we had Tawari Toro. There was loads we liked, particularly environments, some sculpting. The thing that kind of was the biggest knock amongst the judges was the similarity of the greens, and we felt it probably could have pushed higher if it hadn't relied so much on the really the stock tier, the kind of repetitive tiered nature of the greens. But other than that, we liked the environment. We felt it was well done, and it was an interesting course. Coming in 3, and I think there might be some interesting takes on the forum about this one. I've seen the thread, and it's getting a load of love. The playthrough for this one's coming out today. In 3 is Warrigal Trails from Fargo, and Fargo can be rightly a little bit upset about not getting through. It's a really good course that would have stood its ground in most contests, and done pretty well. However, the thing that hurt it compared to the top 2 was the consistency of scaling, of bunkering. Some surfaces were just way too big. All 3 judges didn't really like the 9th hole in particular. And just generally, it had a few more missteps than the top 2. The highs might have been a little bit higher than the 2nd place, but it was just that, like, it just didn't quite commit to that for all 18 holes. And that was the main reason. Additionally, we kind of all felt that it was a bit overplanted. As for number 2, Saucy makes it. So Sweet Honey Farm comes in 2nd. We really liked the simplicity of this one, and just it was pure golf, and it was really enjoyable. And on playing it multiple times, it's a lot of fun. And I think this one stands a good chance in group stages. And then finally, coming in at the top is Galloway Port Authority. All 3 of us had that as the top one. Just, we really liked the environment. We thought that maybe a few overly disconnected, too many overly disconnected greens. But honestly, it had some really good holes, and particularly the 16th, I want to say. The long par 5 was an absolute standout. So that was, for all 3 of us, like I say, we were aligned perfectly on 1, 2, and 3, and then one of us had the 5th place course in 4th. So that's our rankings. So Galloway and Sweet Honey Farm make it through to the field. Now, it is and what's really cool about this is we're going to... stream dropped a little bit. What's really cool about this, though, is we're going to end up with those 2 alternate in groups where they genuinely stand a really good chance of going through. So, as for the groups, we ended up with a couple of them where there's lots of people dropping out. So G had 2 people dropping out. I think A had a couple maybe as well, or just 1. I can't remember. Anyway, I'm not going to deliberate this bit overly. Here's where the groups end up. So, like I say, the guys who'd won a contest before I put in as 1 seeds. So Petro goes into A, Grovey goes into G. What we then had was Yipley went into E as the highest ranked alternate, whilst Saucy goes into G as well, alongside Grovey, Pat, at Rock and Roll. And then Nitro fills out D for Eastwood. So that leaves us with the following groups. And I think as we look at those, like, there's a number of those that I will say this a number of different times. There's a lot of these groups where it is not easy to pick the 2nd place course. It might be quite easy to pick the 1st place course in quite a number of the groups, but 2nd place is going to be really tough. Yeah, you've done, but if you make it through the alternate field and you end up in a group that's competitive, yeah, good fun. Group G is good. I think we've got some really tight ones. Now, as for judging, so the aim is to finish judging by the middle of next week. I'm actually hoping it will be done a little bit earlier, but I'm wanting to stress because I think it could be really tight for second in some of these groups. I really want to allow a little bit of time for judges to debate and for other judges who are not on whichever group to be able to deliberate and say, actually, we need to look at this one again or this one again. I'm keen to get the right result. So how it works, you have 3 judges on every single group. They each score the courses from like 1st through to 4th. We're going to end up with some really good courses that come 4th. Like, that's unfortunately what happens. There's going to be some really good courses that come 3rd and miss out. Again, when you have a stacked field, that will happen. But like I say, it's amongst 3 judges, and we'll go from there. So that's this. That's where we're at. Hopefully, that should make for a really interesting contest, and you guys can now go and know the full field and what's happening where and plot your routes, etc. So I'm going to post this in the forums in a minute, and, well, after this stream. But what we're going to do next is we're going to go and play Tanner's course. So, there we go. Thank you for joining along with this. Hopefully entertaining and informative and not too long. So, see you in a minute, and we're going to play Dylan's.